All right, let's dive in. Today, we are cracking the code on what might be one of the most confusing parts of the U.S. tax system: getting an individual taxpayer identification number, or ITIN. If you've ever felt completely stuck trying to figure this out, believe me, you're not alone, and we're going to get you through it. You know this quote from a Reddit user? It just perfectly captures the whole problem. It's this classic Catch-22, right? This incredibly frustrating loop where you need one thing to get the other, but you can't get the other without the first thing. It's a riddle that has left so many applicants totally stumped. But don't you worry, we've got the roadmap right here. We're going to start by really breaking down that Catch-22. Then I'll reveal the one master key that solves the whole puzzle. We'll look at the 3 different ways you can apply, what to expect while you're waiting, and then wrap up with some serious pro tips for success. Okay, so first things first, let's tackle this frustrating puzzle head on. To really get why it's so confusing, we need to be crystal clear on what an ITIN actually is, and more importantly, what it's for.
So, an ITIN is just a 9-digit number, and its one and only job is for federal tax reporting. It's specifically for people who have to file U.S. taxes, but aren't eligible to get a Social Security number. That's the key right there. Its whole purpose is tax compliance.
And here's why this is such a big deal. In 2023 alone, the IRS rejected over 250,000 ITIN applications. Let that sink in. So if you've been rejected or you're worried about it, you are dealing with a really common problem. And listen, the stakes here are incredibly high. Getting rejected isn't just some small paperwork headache. It means your tax refund is frozen. It could mean you get denied for super important tax credits like the child tax credit. And yeah, it can even lead to penalties for missing deadlines. Not to mention just the massive stress of having to deal with the IRS again and again. Okay, but now for the good news. I promise there is a master key that unlocks this entire puzzle. This one little piece of information is the solution to that whole Catch-22 we started with. And here it is. This is the secret. You don't apply for the ITIN first and then file your taxes later. No, you have to prepare your U.S. federal tax return, fill out the Form W-7 for the ITIN, and then mail them to the IRS together in the exact same package. So, it's all about the sequence. You prepare your tax return, say your Form 1040, and you just leave the ITIN field blank for the person who needs one. Then you fill out their Form W-7 application. You gather up all your supporting documents, and then you put all of it, the tax return, the W-7, the documents, into one envelope and mail it off. The IRS gets it, processes the W-7 first, assigns the ITIN, and then processes your tax return using that new number. Okay, so now you've got the master key. The next step is figuring out how you're going to submit your application. You've basically got 3 distinct options, and trust me, each one has some pretty big pros and cons. Now this table lays out the trade-offs really clearly. You can mail everything yourself, but that's risky because you have to send original documents, like your actual passport, in the mail. Yikes. Option 2, you can go to an IRS Taxpayer Assistance Center, a TAC, where they'll verify your documents right there on the spot. Or there's a third way, using an authorized acceptance agent. These are IRS-approved pros who can help you out, and most importantly, they can certify your documents for you so you never have to part with the originals. And this brings us to a really critical point. You have 3 choices, but the data clearly shows that one of these paths is way more successful than the others.
And this chart just says it all, doesn't it? This data is from the Taxpayer Advocate Service, and it's pretty eye-opening. If you mail your application, you've got about a 69% chance of getting it approved. Go in person to an IRS office, and that jumps to almost 80%. But look at that top bar. Using a certifying acceptance agent, or a CAA, pushes the success rate to over 85%. I mean, that is a huge difference when so much is on the line.
So let's say you've picked your path. You've sent in your application package. Now what? Well, welcome to what we like to call
the IRS waiting game. First things first, you gotta set your expectations. The IRS usually says it takes about 7 weeks to hear back. But honestly, that could easily stretch to 9 or even 11 weeks, especially if you apply during the busy tax season or from outside the US. For now, you just have to be patient. The best case scenario, you get the green light. A letter called a CP-565 notice will show up in your mailbox. This is the one you want. It means your application was approved, your ITIN has been assigned, you did it. Now, you might get a yellow light. This comes as a CP-566 notice. It's not a rejection, so don't panic. It just means the IRS needs a little more information from you to finish processing everything. You'll need to respond to it to keep the ball rolling. And finally, the one we want to avoid, the red light. This is the CP-567 notice. This means your application was flat out rejected. The notice will explain why, but unfortunately, it means you have to go back to square one and start the whole process over. So, to help you stay far, far away from that red light, let's just wrap everything up with a quick summary of the absolute most important pro tips for getting this done right the first time. Okay, here's your must-do checklist. First, and I can't say this enough, file your Form W-7 with your tax return. Next, please double-check that all your documents are current and not expired. This is such a common mistake. Here's a huge one. You have to use the special Austin, Texas mailing address just for the ITIN operation. Do not send it to the regular address for tax returns. And based on that data we saw, you should really consider using a certifying acceptance agent. And finally, if you're just renewing an old ITIN, make sure you put that old number on line 6F of the W-7. It'll prevent a lot of headaches. And this right here is the form at the center of it all, Form W-7. I know, it might look a little intimidating, but once you know the secret, that you have to file it with your tax return, it stops being a barrier and it becomes the key that unlocks the whole process. And that brings us to our final thought for today. Officially, an ITIN is just a number for tax compliance. That's its job. But we all know that in the real world, it often becomes the key to opening bank accounts, building credit, and really accessing the broader financial system in the US. So while getting it is a challenge, the real question is, what doors does this number truly open for you? Something to think about.